So I want to start our conversation today by um, looking at a really bizarre contradiction in how we understand effort. Because, we're all raised with this very linear equation.
Right. The whole idea of input equals output.
Exactly. You apply force and you get a result.
Yeah.
Like if you want to move a heavy boulder, what do? You put your shoulder against it, you strain, you push, and the boulder rolls forward.
Yeah, mechanical force. It makes sense. It's predictable.
It feels incredibly safe because we rely on that equation for everything. But then, you pivot away from moving rocks and you look at your own life.
And that's where the equation completely falls apart.
It totally shatters.
Yeah.
You try to apply that exact same sheer force of will to change your reality, and suddenly it's like the rules don't apply anymore.
Well, it doesn't just shatter. It actually, it often reverses itself. The harder you push, the heavier the boulder seems to get until it basically rolls right back over you.
Which is just, it's incredibly frustrating for people. Because you're the listener, right? You're out there and you adopt the new morning routines, you visualize, you relentlessly monitor your thoughts.
You're doing all the right things.
Yeah, doing everything right to elevate your life. And yet, despite this overwhelming mountain of effort, you just keep snapping back to square one.
Like a rubber band.
Exactly like an invisible, impossibly stubborn rubber band. You run as fast as you can, you stretch that band to its absolute limit, and then, snap.
You're right back in the same old argument.
Right. The same financial stress, the same underlying feeling of emptiness.
Right.
And the question we have to ask today is, why does relentless hard work so often fail to produce a different reality?
I think it's because we approach personal transformation like we're trying to fix a broken arm.
Okay, how so?
Well, with a broken arm, it's a mechanical issue, right? It's
Oh, yeah.
visible. You look at the bone, you see the jagged line, and you put a cast on it. The problem is isolated.
Right, it's a physical fix for a physical problem.
Exactly. But when we talk about materializing a completely new reality, we're operating in a landscape that defies those crude tools. The reason sheer willpower fails is that it's completely mismatched for the task.
So force just doesn't translate.
Not at all. It's honestly like trying to rewrite a computer's operating system by screaming at the monitor. Force is just irrelevant when you're dealing with the underlying architecture of your own mind.
I love that analogy. And let's pull the thread on that, because that's the entire mission of our analysis today. We are exploring the hidden mechanics of human potential.
Yeah, the actual spiritual science of materializing a desired reality.
And I want to be really clear with everyone listening. When we say spiritual science, we are completely setting aside the wishful thinking,
Oh, absolutely. No magical hoping or superficial platitudes here.
Right. We are strictly going to examine the objective, internal architecture that actively constructs the external world you walk through every single day.
Because we have to strip away the romance and the mysticism. We're looking at a very real, unbroken chain of causality.
Meaning the internal creates the external.
Yes. Your internal state directly authors your external environment. And, most people treat their mind like a passenger seat, believing life is just kind of driving them around.
Like they're just along for the ride.
Right, but your mind is the engine, it's the navigation system, and if you don't understand the mechanisms at play, you're essentially trying to fly a commercial airliner by sitting in the cabin and flapping your arms.
Which is exhausting.
Ugh.
And, it looks ridiculous to anyone who knows how the plane actually works.
And most importantly, flapping your arms won't get you off the ground.
Exactly. So that brings us face to face with the first major hurdle, the invisible anchor.
Yeah, the resistance.
Right. So you decide to change your life. You feel that initial burst of motivation. You start taking steps towards, say, a new career or a healthier relationship or just profound peace of mind.
And then, almost immediately, bam.
Bam. You hit a massive wall of resistance. You find yourself self-sabotaging out of nowhere. You suddenly feel exhausted.
Or you pick a fight over absolutely nothing.
Right. You return to the exact habits you swore you were done with. And society usually labels this as a lack of discipline. We just beat ourselves up. But what if we are completely misdiagnosing the situation?
Oh, we absolutely are misdiagnosing it. That intense resistance you feel isn't a lack of discipline at all.
What is it then?
It's a direct confrontational encounter with what we can call the old frequency. And we need to understand this not as some poetic metaphor, but as a literal energetic signature.
An energetic signature.
Yeah. It is essentially a living entity residing within the architecture of your consciousness.
Wait, hold on. A living entity, like, you mean it has its own independent life?
Yes.
Because I'm not going to lie, that sounds slightly terrifying, like
Yeah.
some sort of parasite living in the brain.
Well, think of it more as a complex adaptive system. Over a vast passage of eras in your own life, you have fed a very specific way of being.
Right, with our thoughts and reactions.
Exactly. You've nourished it with an endless tide of your attention. This entity is the culmination of your past perceptions, your deeply held beliefs, your expectations.
So it's basically the sum total of who I've been up until this point.
Yes, and your historical emotional baselines. Because it's a concentrated energy system existing within the mental planes, it has actually developed its own rudimentary psychology.
Wow. And, I mean, the primary drive of any psychology, of any living system is self-preservation, right? We want to stay alive.
That is the absolute core of the issue. The old frequency is essentially the outdated version of you. It's the identity that perfectly adapted to survive the struggles and the anxieties you're now trying to escape.
So it feeds on that old stress.
It does. To that old frequency, your anxiety is its oxygen. Your doubt is its food. So when you suddenly decide to elevate your life,
It panics.
yes, when you attempt to introduce a completely new frequency of abundance or unshakable peace, you're not just learning a new skill, you are actively starving that old identity.
You are threatening its very existence.
Precisely.
I am picturing this kind of like a smartphone. Let's say you try to install a massive new update. Let's call the app Unstoppable Joy.
Okay, I like where this is going.
But the phone's foundational operating system was built entirely on a framework of scarcity and fear.
Right. So what does the OS do?
The OS doesn't just fail to run the app. It actually identifies the Unstoppable Joy code as a hostile virus.
Exactly. It flags it as a threat.
Yeah, the system just goes into overdrive to quarantine and delete the threat before it can rewrite the hard drive.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The operating system will actively rebel to protect its equilibrium. And this is exactly why self-sabotage can feel so incredibly overwhelming and sudden.
Because the system is fighting back.
Right. The old frequency will generate intense feelings of fatigue just as you sit down to work on a passion project. Or it will trigger a sudden, unexplainable urge to isolate yourself when a really healthy relationship is blooming.
It's just doing whatever it takes to stop the new code.
It will even seemingly orchestrate external chaos, like sudden financial hiccups or bizarre professional misunderstandings.
Just to yank your attention back.
Yes, just to forcefully yank your attention back to the familiar, chaotic baseline it requires to survive.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate for a moment here. Because when you are in the thick of that self-sabotage, it feels incredibly malicious.
It really does.
It feels like an enemy has set up camp in your mind and is actively plotting your downfall. So if this entity is constructed from my own past, why does it feel like it hates me?
It feels malicious because its goals are completely opposed to the desires of your conscious mind.
Right, your cross purposes.
Exactly. You want peace, but it needs chaos to survive. You want wealth, but it needs the familiar struggle of poverty to maintain its structural integrity.
But you're saying it doesn't actually hate me.
No, we must realize it is not malicious. A cornered animal isn't malicious when it bites, right? It's simply acting on the primal instinct of survival.
That makes sense. It's just trying to live.
Yeah. Right. This outdated identity doesn't know it's bad for you. It only knows that it is you.
Wow. So it's fighting for your life, mistakenly believing that its death means your death.
Yes. And understanding this really points us toward a profound implication about the nature of our reality. The mental and spiritual planes are the true causal realms of our existence.
The causal realms, meaning that's where the cause actually happens.
Exactly. The physical world, everything you can touch, see, and measure is merely the delayed effect. It's the shadow cast by the causal realm.
So the physical world is just the printout. The printer isn't where the document is actually written.
A perfect analogy. If you're angry at the typos on the printed page, you don't use whiteout on the computer monitor.
Right, that would be ridiculous. You have to fix the source code.
Precisely. Any lack of awareness about what is happening internally, like ignoring the fact that this fiercely protective old frequency is running the show, will continually manifest as baffling, random obstacles externally.
Because the shadow keeps reflecting the source code.
Exactly. You'll look at your life completely bewildered as to why the same types of toxic partners keep finding you, or why your money always dries up the exact moment you get a little ahead.
Because the old OS is quietly deleting your progress in the background.
Yes. You fail to realize that the external recurring nightmare is just a mirror reflecting your internal refusal to address the old frequency.
Man, that is that brings us to a massive collective assumption that almost all of us make.
The morality assumption.
Yes, because we realize this internal battle is happening. We feel the old self fighting us, and we think, well, I am a fundamentally good person. I try to do the right thing.
I pay my taxes.
I don't hurt people. I volunteer on the weekends. I hold the door open. And we naturally think, shouldn't this moral goodness grant me some kind of advantage?
It's such a common trap.
Right. Doesn't the universe eventually step in and reward the people who are just genuinely trying to be nice?
The answer to that question is arguably the hardest pill for humanity to swallow. We desperately want to believe in a cosmic ledger.
Like a big scoreboard in the sky.
Exactly. But the universe is governed by completely impersonal, immutable mechanics. Being a deeply moral, accommodating, or, nice person does not automatically entitle anyone to a life of abundance or vibrant health or success.
Oh man, I can practically hear the collective groan from the listeners right now.
I know, it stings.
Because we are conditioned from early childhood to expect gold stars for good behavior. We sit at our desks, we keep quiet, we do our homework, and we expect the teacher, or in this case the universe, to hand us a reward.
To give us a treat.
Yeah, we spend a massive portion of our lives waiting patiently for cosmic payout just for being polite and harmless.
It's a deeply comforting illusion, but it completely conflates human societal rules with universal mechanics.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about the fundamental laws of the natural world. Gravity does not suspend its rules because a remarkably generous philanthropist trips near a cliff.
Right. Gravity doesn't care about your charity work.
Exactly. The law of gravity doesn't say, oh, they've donated so much, let's just let them float safely to the ground. Electricity does not spare the virtuous person who touches an exposed wire.
The wire shocks you either way.
Yes. The natural world operates with an absolute, majestic impartiality. And the mechanics of reality creation operate with that exact same impartiality.
So the universe doesn't have a moral compass. It just has, what, a resonance meter?
It only reads resonance. Reality only ever responds to the energetic frequency you're continuously broadcasting.
Which explains so much, actually.
It does. The reason we so often see well-intentioned, deeply kind individuals experiencing chronic suffering or endless financial struggle isn't evidence of a cruel universe.
It's not a cosmic injustice.
No. It's simply because, despite their external acts of goodness, they are unknowingly carrying a baseline frequency rooted in lack, guilt, fear, or just a profound sense of unworthiness.
Let's ground this with an analogy, because I think this is so crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the universe as an immense radio broadcasting tower. The classical music station, playing this beautiful symphony, does not care how many weekends you spent helping your neighbors paint their fences. It doesn't care if you have a pristine moral record.
Not even a little bit.
Right. Because if your internal radio dial is physically tuned to the heavy metal station, you are getting heavy metal. Period.
That is exactly how it works.
You could be the most saintly figure in human history, but if your internal dial is rusted and stuck on the frequency of struggle, the universe is mechanically obligated to broadcast a reality of struggle directly into your living room.
The radio tower cannot judge. It can only transmit. And society often teaches us that a passive, timid, overly accommodating consciousness is somehow a virtue.
Like we're supposed to be small.
Yes. People unconsciously shrink themselves. They diminish their own light so they don't make others uncomfortable. They adopt this identity of quiet, suffering martyrdom.
Secretly hoping the universe will eventually pity them enough to reward them for it.
Exactly. But a passive, stagnant consciousness will always, without a single exception, reflect an external reality that is passive and stagnant. You cannot earn a vibrant, powerful reality through polite submission.
You have to actually embody it.
You must become the energetic equivalent of the reality you desire.
Okay, so if the universe is this utterly impartial radio tower, just matching our broadcast, how exactly does the machinery work? Like, how does it take this invisible internal frequency and lock it into the solid, unyielding events of our day-to-day lives?
To understand the machinery, we really have to examine the two primary mechanical functions of the universe: magnification and maintenance.
Magnification and maintenance. These are the twin engines driving the physical manifestation.
Exactly.
Okay, let's start with the first engine, magnification. What is the universe actually amplifying?
The universe is in a perpetual state of scanning your base emotional resonance, because emotion is the true fuel of your energetic frequency.
So it's looking at how we feel deeply.
Right. Whatever feeling you carry with the greatest intensity, the universe immediately identifies it and seeks to magnify it. It acts as an amplifier.
Can you give an example of how that plays out?
Sure. If you wake up and your baseline state is a low-level simmering irritation, perhaps you're frustrated about an upcoming meeting or you just feel generally underappreciated.
Which happens to all of us.
Absolutely. When you broadcast that, reality immediately responds by arranging a vast constellation of circumstances to justify and expand that specific irritation.
Oh, we have all lived this day. You wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you immediately stub your toe on the dresser.
Yes, the classic stub toe.
Right. You hobble to the kitchen, you spill coffee down your clean shirt, you get in the car and hit an endless sequence of red lights.
Every single one is red.
Every one. You finally arrive at work, and your computer decides to run a mandatory update that takes an hour. In those moments, it feels undeniably like the world is actively, maliciously plotting to ruin your day.
But the world is not plotting. It is simply honoring the seed you planted. Because the external world is merely a reflection of your internal state, it validates your chosen emotional frequency.
By giving you a massive harvest of evidence to support it.
Exactly. It takes your internal irritation and projects it outward into tangible events. That is the magnification phase. It blows the signal up so you can clearly see what you are broadcasting.
Okay, so what happens after it's blown up?
Well, once it has magnified the state, the second function takes over: maintenance.
Because nature loves efficiency. Systems always crave the path of least resistance.
Yes. Every complex system in the natural world seeks equilibrium to conserve energy. The universe works relentlessly to keep you anchored exactly where you are, establishing what we perceive as inescapable loops.
Or just locks it in.
Right. Once reality has magnified your irritation or your deep sense of scarcity or your feeling of being chronically ignored, it recalibrates the environment to match that frequency permanently.
Wow, so this is the underlying architecture of feeling stuck.
That's exactly what it is. This is why people feel trapped in generational cycles of poverty or endless loops of toxic relationships.
Because the universe is maintaining the equilibrium.
You aren't actually trapped by the external circumstances. The circumstances are merely maintaining the structural equilibrium of your internal frequency.
Let's bring time into this equation, because when you are stuck in a cycle like that, the passage of days and months feels like it's just pouring concrete over your feet. How does time interact with this maintenance phase?
Time introduces a fascinating, albeit dangerous mechanic that we can refer to as universal interest.
Like financial compound interest.
Very much so. It operates almost exactly like compound interest in a financial system. The longer you reside in a specific state of mind, the more reality compounds the energetic investment.
Oh man, so if you sit in a frequency of quiet desperation for an extended season of your life.
The universe accrues immense interest on that state. It builds an incredibly robust, dense, heavy physical reality of desperation around you. It basically reinforces the walls of your prison.
Which means snapping out of it requires way more than just a passing positive thought. You can't undo a decade of compound interest with, one afternoon of repeating affirmations.
No, you can't. It requires a massive pattern interrupt.
What kind of interrupt?
It requires sacrifice, and we really need to completely redefine that word.
How so? Because usually when we hear sacrifice, we imagine physical loss. We think of suffering, giving up our favorite things, enduring pain.
Right. But universally, true sacrifice is a purely energetic mechanism. It's defined as the deliberate absolute surrender of a lower state of being to make room for a higher one.
The surrender of a lower state of being.
Yes, you must willingly sacrifice your comfortable anxieties. You must sacrifice your familiar grievances. You must lay your long-held identity of victimhood on the altar and burn it.
You literally have to let the old self die.
Exactly. Until you completely surrender the old frequency, the universe will simply continue to compound the interest on your suffering.
All right, I need to throw a massive roadblock in here, because this is the pushback I hear constantly when discussing this topic.
Let's hear it.
What if the base emotion I am feeling is entirely justified?
Ah, the justification trap.
Right. Let's say I'm not just waking up cranky because I stubbed my toe. Let's say I am experiencing profound righteous anger because I am dealing with a fundamentally broken, corrupt system.
Okay.
I have been betrayed. I have been genuinely wronged. Are you telling me that my justified outrage is going to be magnified against me? Because honestly, that feels like the ultimate form of victim blaming.
Yeah.
Am I being punished for seeing the truth of a flawed world?
I hear the friction there, and I validate it. It is the single most common, most agonizing roadblock for deeply aware people.
It just feels incredibly unfair.
It does. But we have to return to the cold, impersonal nature of the mechanics we discussed earlier. We must separate human concepts of justice from universal resonance.
The radio tower doesn't care about justice.
Exactly. The universe does not sit in a courtroom weighing the moral justification of an emotion. It has no interest in who is right or who started it. It only registers the amplitude and the flavor of the frequency.
So justified anger is still vibrationally just anger.
Precisely. The radio tower doesn't care why the dial is tuned to heavy metal. It doesn't look at your frequency and say, well, they have a magnificent, historically accurate reason to be furious, so let's override their signal and reward them with a life of serene peace.
That would violate its own laws.
It would. It simply registers a massive, high-amplitude broadcast of fury, and it mechanically delivers a reality flooded with conflict to match it.
Wow.
To shift the compounding interest in your favor, you have to make a radical choice. You have to prioritize your desired frequency over your absolute right to be offended.
Let's just sit with that for a moment.
Yeah.
Prioritizing your frequency over your right to be offended, that requires a colossal dismantling of the ego.
It really does. We love being right.
We do. We love having our grievances validated. But you're saying that clinging to the rightness of our anger is exactly what keeps us locked in the prison.
That is the tragic irony of it.
So we have to radically rethink how we interact with our desires. We have to stop trying to extract things from the world and start altering our internal resonance.
Which brings us to arguably the most frustrating, deeply counterintuitive law of reality creation. It's a paradox that traps the overwhelming majority of humanity in an endless hamster wheel of pursuit.
What's the law?
The law states this: you can only ever acquire what you already internally possess.
I am going to need you to unpack that, because on a purely logical, physical level, that sounds like absolute nonsense.
I know it does.
Like, how can I possibly possess the thriving business, the perfect health, or the financial freedom if I am literally sitting in a tiny apartment looking at an empty bank account? I don't have it. That's why I'm trying to get it.
The confusion stems entirely from our obsession with the material plane. We completely misunderstand what possession actually means to the underlying architecture of reality.
We think possession means physically gripping the object in our hands.
Right. Or seeing the numbers load on a screen, or having a specific person sitting across the table from us. But remember, the physical plane is merely the trailing edge of reality.
The printout.
Yes. It is the dense, slow-moving exhaust of the causal realms. To the universe, the only true, valid form of having is vibrational possession.
Vibrational possession, meaning owning the internal state of the thing before the shadow of it appears.
Yes. Think about the mechanics of wanting. Whenever you intensely want something, whenever you are desperate for it, yearning for it, staying up late, stressing over how to get it, what is the actual frequency you are broadcasting?
You're broadcasting lack.
You are screaming a signal of separation into the void. You are stating, I am standing right here, and the thing I desire is way over there, separate from me.
And because the first engine of the universe is magnification.
It magnifies the separation. Your intense, desperate desire acts as a colossal repulsive force. It actively pushes the outcome further away in order to maintain the structural equilibrium of your wanting state.
Because if you got it, you'd stop wanting it.
Exactly. Think about it. If you finally received the object of your desire, you would instantly stop wanting it. That would violate the frequency you are currently generating.
The universe is just protecting your broadcast.
The universe literally says they are broadcasting a massive signal of yearning. I must protect this state of yearning by ensuring they never actually get the thing.
That is mind-blowing.
So to materialize a desire, you must perform a radical internal pivot. You must stop looking at your goal as a distant, glittering object on the horizon, and you must begin looking from the goal as an already established, undeniable identity.
Okay, this reminds me of an analogy that perfectly captures this dynamic. Think about a beautiful, elusive butterfly.
I like this one.
The butterfly represents your ultimate desire, the career, the peace, the relationship. Now, if you decide you absolutely must have that butterfly, what is the default human reaction? You grab a net.
And you start running wildly around the field.
Exactly. You are leaping, swinging, sweating, panting, driven by frantic desperation. And what does the butterfly do?
It flees.
It flees. Your chaotic energy, your sheer desperate pursuit, guarantees the butterfly will stay entirely out of your reach.
That frantic swinging of the net is the exact physical manifestation of the frequency of wanting. It is pure repulsion.
Exactly. So what is the alternative? How do you actually get the butterfly? You stop running, you put the net down, you turn your back on the butterfly, and you look at the ground in front of you.
You focus on the environment.
Right. You begin to tend to your own garden. You cultivate the rich soil. You grow the specific nectar that you know the butterfly naturally seeks.
You change your resonance.
You create an internal environment so incredibly resonant, so perfectly aligned with the butterfly's nature, that it has no choice but to flutter down and land softly on your shoulder. You don't catch the butterfly. You become the environment that attracts it. You must become the desire of your desires.
To become the desire of your desires is to understand the true nature of what we are actually chasing. Because the vast majority of people do not actually want the physical items they are killing themselves to obtain.
They don't.
No, they don't want the little pieces of paper with numbers printed on them. They don't want a specific title on a corporate door. They don't even necessarily want the physical proximity of a specific person.
What do they want then?
What they are desperately hungering for is the internal emotion they firmly believe those external procs will magically provide them.
They are chasing a feeling.
Yes.
They want the profound exhale of security. They want the overwhelming warmth of being truly seen and appreciated. They want the lightness of absolute freedom.
Always. It always comes down to the feeling. And because those targets are fundamentally emotional, they are internally generated frequencies.
Meaning you don't need the prop to feel it.
Exactly. You do not require the external physical prop to flip the internal switch. By deliberately, intentionally generating that exact emotion of profound security or overwhelming appreciation internally first, long before any physical evidence arrives to justify it, you instantly collapse the energetic gap between you and your desire.
Because now you possess it vibrationally.
Yes. Once you vibrationally possess the state of security, you have satisfied the universal law. You are no longer separated. You are no longer wanting. And reality, strictly bound by its own mechanical nature, races to rearrange the physical furniture to match your new internal architecture.
Okay, this sounds beautiful in theory, but let's drag this down into the messy reality of being human for a second.
Let's do it.
Generating a completely new internal reality, trying to genuinely feel a state of profound financial abundance while you are literally holding a stack of past due bills is agonizingly difficult.
It's incredibly challenging.
How do we bypass our own crushing skepticism? Because my conscious mind is sitting there looking at the empty bank account and screaming, "You are delusional. This is a lie. Look at the physical evidence." How do we silence that deeply cynical, logical voice in our head?
This is the exact threshold where philosophical concepts must give way to pure internal mechanics. The reason you experience that crippling skepticism, the reason that voice feels so loud and undeniable, is because you are attempting to rewrite the fundamental code of your reality using the wrong mental machinery entirely.
You're using the wrong tool.
Yes. The conscious, highly analytical, alert mind is fundamentally incapable of rewriting your internal architecture.
Why? Because it's too obsessed with the immediate physical evidence.
Because of the specific frequency it operates on. For the overwhelming majority of humanity, particularly those navigating the modern, hyper-connected world, the conscious mind is permanently redlined in survival mode.
Just constantly stressed.
It operates in a rapid, highly vigilant beta wave frequency. This mental state is biologically designed for one thing: analyzing immediate threats, calculating worst-case scenarios, and managing sudden crises.
It is looking for predators.
It is an extraordinary tool for navigating physical danger or balancing a spreadsheet, but it is completely, utterly useless for materializing a new reality.
It's like trying to compose a fragile, intricate symphony while sprinting on a treadmill at maximum speed, while people are throwing heady dodgeballs at your head.
That's quite an image, but it's accurate.
You cannot access the necessary depth. You are just dodging and breathing.
That is the exact neurological reality for most people. Operating constantly in this high alert, braced for impact frequency keeps us permanently locked in the holding pattern. To achieve true materialization, to actually access the source code and rewrite your internal baseline, you have to step off the treadmill.
I have to get out of the beta waves.
You have to bypass the cynical conscious mind altogether. You must cross the bridge into the profound, boundless stillness of the subconscious.
I think a lot of people hear subconscious and they think of a dark, murky basement where we hide our childhood trauma. But you were talking about it as a control room.
It is the ultimate control room.
How do we actually cross that bridge? What does the mechanics of that crossing look like?
It requires cultivating a state of profound internal unity and deep radical relaxation. Ancient wisdom traditions have pointed to this inner sanctuary for ages, and modern neurology mirrors it when we observe the brain transitioning into much slower, deeper wave states, akin to theta.
So the brain literally slows down.
It does. In this state of absolute heavy peace, the frantic analytical mind finally powers down. The cynicism simply evaporates because the survival mechanism is turned off.
It's safe.
Yes. You reach a point of such profound internal equilibrium that momentarily you desire absolutely nothing. You don't want the money, you don't want the relationship, you don't want anything. You simply feel complete.
And what happens in that state?
It is only within this fertile void, this profound stillness, that the subconscious mind softens and becomes malleable.
It's like heating up metal before you try to bend it. If you hit cold metal with a hammer, it just shatters or rings your ears. You have to soften it in the fire of stillness first.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So once we are in that state, how do we communicate the new reality? Do we just repeat words?
Language is a clumsy, ineffective tool for the subconscious. You don't use words. You certainly don't use frantic, hollow repetition of affirmations that you don't actually believe.
Because the subconscious doesn't care about the words.
Exactly. You use the native language of the subconscious, emotion. We have to look beyond the brain here. The electromagnetic field generated by the human heart is exponentially vaster, infinitely more powerful than the electromagnetic field of the brain.
So the brain thinks, but the heart feels.
The brain calculates, but the heart broadcasts.
So sitting in a chair, tensely repeating, I am wealthy, while feeling a knot of terror in your stomach. That's completely useless. The universe just hears the terror.
It only registers the terror. However, a solitary spark of vivid, intensely emotionally charged imagination, a single fleeting moment in that state of stillness where you truly, deeply feel the overwhelming relief, the soaring joy, or the profound gratitude of your desired reality can instantly rewrite the internal architecture.
Wait, really? Just a solitary spark?
Yes, because the subconscious mind does not possess a filter to distinguish between an event happening in the physical world and an event vividly experienced in the emotional theater of the mind. It registers the emotional truth of the experience as absolute reality.
Okay, but I have to bring the skepticism back in on behalf of the listener trying to navigate a chaotic Tuesday.
Let's ground it.
Cultivating this profound theta-level stillness sounds magical, but how can anyone realistically access this inner sanctuary when the external world is screaming for their immediate attention?
It is difficult.
We have screaming toddlers, we have demanding bosses, we have notifications buzzing every 3 seconds, we have real-world responsibilities demanding an immediate, often panicked reaction. How do you find a void of peace in a world that never shuts up?
It is the ultimate challenge of navigating the modern era, but the key is a massive reframing of what stillness actually is.
Okay, how should we reframe it?
We view stillness as a luxury. We think it's something reserved for monks on mountains or people with trust funds and no responsibilities. We view it as a retreat, a way of hiding from the world.
Escape.
Exactly. But we must realize that this stillness is not a retreat. It is the very command center from which the world is directed. When you finally grasp that the external chaos of your life is merely a magnified reflection of your internal franticness, you realize that retreating to stillness is the single most practical, highly leveraged action you can possibly take.
So it's not avoiding work, it's doing the real work.
Yes. If you do not relentlessly conquer the internal noise, you will be a permanent victim of the external noise.
That reframing changes everything. The stillness isn't running away, it's stepping into the captain's chair.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's walk through the sequence. We do the work, we find the stillness, we utilize the language of emotion to rewrite the subconscious, we establish this elevated magnetic frequency.
Right.
But we still have physical bodies. We still have to wake up, commute, interact with humans, and move through the physical plane. How does this internal, invisible peace translate into outward physical action? Because I assume we don't just sit on a meditation cushion and wait for a briefcase of cash to fall through the ceiling.
Action is a mandatory bridge in the physical plane, but the fundamental nature of the action transforms entirely. The tragic mistake most people make is trying to outrun their internal boundaries through sheer, brutal physical effort.
Which goes back to the boulder analogy.
Exactly. They attempt to perform high-level, incredibly strenuous actions while still vibrating at a low-level, scarcity-based frequency.
It is the absolute definition of modern grind culture. Sleep 4 hours, hustle, force it to happen, break through the wall with your forehead.
And it is energetically fruitless. You are trying to force a massive high-resonance outcome through a tiny fear-based frequency filter.
The system can't handle
The
it.
system will always collapse under the friction. You will burn out, or the opportunity will mysteriously dissolve. But when your internal frequency is genuinely upgraded through the stillness, action ceases to be a frantic pushing. It evolves into intuition.
Intuition is a word that carries a lot of baggage. People think of it as a magical sixth sense. Let's ground it. What does intuition look like mechanically?
Mechanically, true intuition is a form of inner guidance. It's a gentle, undeniable mental nudging that arises perfectly in the moment.
So it's not a burning bush. It's subtle.
Very subtle. When your baseline frequency aligns with your ultimate desire, you no longer have to meticulously calculate every single agonizing step. You simply know the next right move.
How does that actually feel in real life?
You're driving, and you get a sudden, illogical urge to take a different route, completely avoiding a massive gridlock. Or you're staring at your inbox and you feel inexplicably drawn to send a specific risky email to a contact, which immediately lands a massive client.
So it just flows.
Right. You decide at the last minute to attend an event you were dreading, and you bump into the exact person you needed to meet. The action flows effortlessly. It doesn't feel like a grind. It feels like following a breadcrumb trail laid out by your own upgraded frequency.
Okay, so we elevate the frequency, we follow the intuitive breadcrumbs, and our reality begins to blossom. But this doesn't happen in a vacuum. We live in a society.
They do.
We have families, friend groups, coworkers, and from everything I've seen, the moment a person starts radically changing their frequency, trusting their intuition, and stepping out of the struggle, the people around them don't throw a parade.
No, they generally don't.
They get incredibly uncomfortable.
This introduces a crucial and often deeply painful phase of the materialization process, the necessity of transcending the collective.
The hive mind.
Yes. From a purely evolutionary standpoint, humanity is hardwired to conform to the hive mind. For our distant ancestors, exile from the tribe meant immediate physical death.
So we have this deep fear of standing out.
That ancient primal terror of being cast out, of being different, is woven deep into our neurology. We are conditioned from birth to seek the safety of the consensus, to blend into the background, and to never rock the boat.
It's like we sign these invisible, unspoken social contracts with everyone around us. The contract basically says, I promise to stay at my current level of mediocrity so you don't feel insecure about your life, and you promise to stay at your level so I don't feel threatened.
That is a perfect description of the social dynamic. But elevating your reality inherently violates those silent contracts.
You're breaking the rules.
You cannot ascend to a new, expansive plane of existence while remaining energetically tethered to the collective anxieties, the shared grievances, and the deep limitations of the hive.
You have to cut the cord.
You have to become relentlessly unapologetic about prioritizing your own frequency. And here is the trap that catches so many. The hive will inevitably mislabel your new boundaries as arrogance. They will call you selfish. They will say you've changed.
Because your growth is a mirror reflecting their stagnation. Just as our own internal old frequency fights our elevation, the collective old frequency of our social circle fights it too.
Yes. If connection and belonging in your current circle are subtly defined by shared complaining over drinks, mutual victimhood about the economy, or a shared belief that life is just a struggle.
Then your sudden ascent out of that state feels to them like a betrayal.
Exactly. You are leaving the trench. You have to develop a profound internal fortitude to detach from those emotional strings. You must realize you are not harming anyone by succeeding.
You're just choosing a different broadcast.
You are simply refusing to continually lower your vibration to make others comfortable in their self-imposed prisons.
This friction really highlights how self-worth acts as an absolute physical ceiling on what we can experience.
It absolutely does.
I like to think of limiting beliefs and low self-worth as a group of toxic, uninvited roommates. Imagine you own a magnificent, sprawling estate.
Okay, I can picture that.
But over the passage of eras, these destructive roommates, representing guilt, fear, and shame, they just moved in. They changed the locks on the master bedroom. They trashed the beautiful living spaces.
I completely take over.
Yeah. And over time, they employ such relentless gaslighting that they actually convince you that you don't own the house. They convince you that you are just a lowly tenant who only deserves to sleep on a cot in the damp basement.
It is a phenomenal analogy. The true tragedy is that we actually believe them.
We really do.
Your internal self-worth dictates exactly how much of your own estate you are allowed to occupy. You will continuously hit your head on the ceiling of what you have emotionally accepted as your natural baseline.
So if you don't feel worthy, you stay in the basement.
Yes. If your internal roommates have spent a lifetime convincing you that chaos, betrayal, and struggle are the natural rules of the house, what happens when pure, unadulterated peace or a perfectly healthy relationship finally walks through the front door?
You completely sabotage it.
Yeah.
You unconsciously dismantle the peace because it feels alien. It violates the rules of the house.
Yeah.
You don't know how to exist in a quiet room, so you start a fire just to have something to put out.
You will literally initiate a pointless conflict, or you will find a flaw in a perfect partner, or you will impulsively drain your bank account just to return to the familiar chaotic baseline you recognize.
Just to appease the roommates.
Right. To raise that energetic ceiling, you have to formally evict the roommates. You must use the power of the heart's emotion and the stillness of the subconscious to introduce a completely new baseline of worthiness.
You have to claim the master bedroom.
You must emotionally inhabit the master bedroom of the estate long before the physical locks are actually changed.
Okay, this brings us to a massive, inevitable crossroads. We do everything we've talked about. We evict the terrible roommates. We cultivate the profound stillness.
We bypass the cynical brain.
Right. We use the emotional heart. We elevate the frequency. We ignore the protesting hive mind. And the physical reality actually begins to shift. Things are looking up.
But
then the bottom falls out.
Yeah.
A sudden crisis hits. The massive promotion gets rescinded. This seemingly perfect relationship hits a brutal rocky patch. The bank account takes a massive unexpected hit.
the storm arrives.
Yeah. As we are intentionally elevating our consciousness, what happens when the external world seems to go completely disastrously wrong?
The very first and undeniably the most crucial step is to completely sever your attachment to the label of wrong.
Detach from the concept of wrong. That is an incredibly tall order when you're watching your hard work seemingly burn to the ground.
It is the ultimate test of mastery. We must recognize that the concept of wrong is a human illusion born of our limited, dualistic perspective.
We always want to split things into good or bad.
Exactly. We view the universe as a battleground of good versus evil, progress versus tragic setback. But the universe does not operate in duality. It operates as a singular, unified force.
So it's always working towards one thing.
It is always, always moving toward the resolution of energy. When massive chaos erupts in your external world, particularly during a period of intentional, focused elevation, it is never a cosmic punishment.
What is it then?
It is merely a reflection of unaddressed internal friction being violently brought to the surface so it can be cleared.
Oh, wow. So it's not the building collapsing. It's the structural instability being violently shaken out before the new skyscraper can be fully erected. The old foundation has to crack to make room for the new one.
That is precisely the mechanism. If you look at the cracking foundation and immediately label the chaos as wrong, you plunge your energetic frequency straight back into panic, resistance, and victimhood.
You hit the panic button.
And you instantly reactivate the old frequency. You pull the old identity right back from the brink of death.
So you start the whole cycle over again.
Yes. But if you can train yourself to observe the chaos with profound, unshakable neutrality, realizing it is just dense energy rearranging itself to match your new broadcast, you maintain your elevated state.
You stay in the eye of the storm.
By radically calming the self within amidst the absolute storm, you instantly begin to calm the world around you.
Because the world is just the mirror. If you don't panic, the mirror eventually has no choice but to stop reflecting panic.
True mastery over your reality is not the trivial, ego-driven party trick of bending the external world to your whimsical desires. It is not about forcing a specific luxury car to magically appear in your driveway.
It's way deeper than that.
It is achieving a state of internal equilibrium so profoundly robust, so deeply and heavily anchored, that the external world completely loses its power to dictate your emotional baseline.
You come untouchable.
You become the immovable center of the wheel. The storm rages around you, but you remain completely untouched.
Which means, if we bring this all together to a broader reflection about human potential, outsmarting reality isn't actually about manipulating the physical reality at all.
Not even slightly.
It is, in absolute truth, the intricate, beautiful, often painful art of outsmarting yourself.
We have spent the vast majority of human history believing we are helpless victims of circumstance, fragile leaves tossed around by an uncaring, chaotic wind.
Just hoping for the best.
Right, but the mechanics we've explored reveal a truth that is far more empowering and simultaneously much more demanding of our courage. We are the architects.
We build it all.
We are the directors of the immersive theater we walk through every day. The script of our lives is not written by fate. It is written in the invisible ink of our deepest internal frequencies.
We construct the massive, impenetrable walls, and then we sit in the dark and complain that we can't get out.
We do. And the exact moment you accept absolute, terrifying responsibility for the energetic signature you are broadcasting, you cease to be a prisoner of the physical plane.
You take the power back.
You reclaim your rightful position in the causal realms. You finally realize that the universe is not withholding a single thing from you. It is simply waiting with infinite patience for you to become the vessel capable of holding what you desire.
That is a staggering, heavy, but ultimately liberating realization. We have traversed a massive landscape in this conversation, from the primal survival instincts of our old identity to the impartial radio tower of the universe.
To the immense electromagnetic power of the heart.
Yes, and the illusion of physical possession, and the absolute necessity of transcending the noise of the collective. I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering thought to carry with you and ponder long after this audio stops.
I think you're ready for it.
Consider the biggest, most immovable obstacle in your life right now. Think about the wall you keep hitting, the deep frustration that repeatedly pulls you back to square one.
Look closely at it.
What if that wall isn't an external, physical force put there by a cruel world to keep you out? What if it isn't an enemy at all? What if that massive wall is simply an outdated belief, a terrified, exhausted fragment of your old self, standing right in front of you, quietly asking for your permission to finally leave?